Good morning, everybody. Let me make sure my sound is working this morning. It's an unusual Saturday this morning. This morning we're going to look at some rhythm reading exercises. We're going to look at that in Piano Marvel. If this is your first time joining us, my name's Leon Harrell. I'm the founder of OneMinuteMusicLesson.com. And this is our show, In Tune. We live stream every week, Saturday, 10 a.m. And we talk about various topics pertaining to intentional practice for practicing music. Today's topic, of course, we're going to be talking about rhythm reading and counting techniques. If you have questions or comments, be sure to put them in the chat window. We respond to that here in real time. If you're watching this on the replay, just put your questions in the comments and we'll either reply throughout the week, or maybe we'll tackle your question on next week's show. A couple announcements before we jump into some things. A product we talk about a lot on this show is Piano Marvel. So if you've never heard of that, we'll take a look at that today. But if you are a user of that product, they've just started their Christmas challenge. So if you want to follow along with that, we'll take a quick look at that probably towards the end of the show today. But every season or holiday, they tend to run a challenge just to help students stay motivated as they're learning various things. And they've recently updated their music library, which has roughly 25,000 pieces of music in it, they've just updated it with a lot of new Christmas music. So if you're interested in that, check that out. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. I see folks in the chat this morning. We've got David joining us, and Don, and Sandy. Good morning, everybody. And if you are joining us live for the first time, just type in a quick hello in the chat window. Let me know where you're located around the world. We have people that join us from all over the world. And if you'll also let me know what instrument you play, just in case there's anything extra we can sort of add to the conversation there. But we're going to get rolling. I'm going to switch over to Piano Marvel. Before I do that, I'll throw a link up on the screen. If you haven't downloaded Piano Marvel, visit oneminutemusiclesson.com/toolbox. You'll see a link there to Piano Marvel. You can sign up for a 30-day free trial. And if you do decide to continue to use the product, by using our link, you'll get 20% off your subscription. All right, so I'm going to switch over to it right now. And let's take a look at that. And let's see, give me just a moment. We're going to switch to screen. And we're going to switch to Safari. All right, so here we are inside of that. I'm going to shrink my window down just a bit. And like I said, the topic of today is really rhythm reading. So what I'm going to do is go into the, let's start from the home menu. So when you load up Piano Marvel, it'll look like so, and you'll have the options to do the library, which is the music library where you'll choose different songs to play. Sight reading, which we can look at towards the end of today's lesson as well if we have time. The method cabinet and the technique cabinet. So we're going to start in the method cabinet this morning. So we can either click at it at the bottom left here, or the method menu at the top. They both take us to the same spot. And if you are new to playing piano or new to reading music, this is where you probably want to start if you're totally brand new. So in the method cabinet, you're going to be learning really from scratch how to count rhythms, how to read pitches on the staff. You'll see songs and exercises that are really geared toward that very beginner level. But some things I want to point out to you that are not abundantly obvious when you first load the software. At the top, you'll see a link to the method books itself. So that the method cabinet and the technique cabinet have 6 different books loaded inside them. And then also you'll have a link for lesson videos where it will kind of walk you through step by step. What will you learn in this cabinet? The cabinet is broken down to 6 different levels, and each level has 5 trophies, if you will, within the cabinet. So essentially, as you complete a portion or a segment, you'll earn a trophy, and that might be a bronze, a silver, or a gold, depending on how well you score through all the different exercises. But it's really nice for tracking your progress and just sort of seeing visually where you are in the process. But the beauty of this is that the software is lined up perfectly with the method book that they give you. So I'm going to click on this method book number 1. All right, and we're going to take a quick peek at that. All right, so as we scroll down, this is a PDF, so you can print it out. If I'm not mistaken, it may be possible to buy these as actual books. I've never purchased the actual books. I just use the PDFs. But we'll just take a look at the PDF itself. So starting with the table of contents, again, if you've never played piano before, it starts out with just a very simple introduction of the notes on the staff, the position of the body at the keyboard, the numbering system for the hands. So all these things are just rudimentary information you would want to know before you start the process. All right, but just taking a quick look at the table of contents. For today's purposes, we're going to look at the whole note, the half note, the quarter note, so pages 6, 7, and 8. Then we'll jump ahead to page 18 for the 8th notes. And then that's going to wrap up this first level. Maybe we'll also look at 52 and 53, the dotted half note and dotted quarter note. So again, these are just beginning level things. So we'll start there, and then we'll probably move into some more advanced things towards the middle or end of today. Okay, so we're going to look at whole note and whole rest first, page 6. So I'm going to scroll down to page 6. All right, and I'm going to make this to where we can kind of fit the whole thing. Good morning, Sylvia from Alberta, Canada. Wonderful to see more Canadians. We've got, in this example, we're really just starting at the very beginning of the process. So when we count music, there's 2 primary meters in music that we'll tend to use. So there are simple meters and compound meters. And I'm just going to turn on my picture-in-picture here so we can chit-chat a little more. So in my book, I have a book that I've written called How to Read Music Easily in 30 Days. And I take a very different approach to sort of teaching how to read music than most systems. So the Piano Marvel system and its method books, very traditional, great system. And if you're an absolute beginner, it may be really perfect for you. If you are someone who has a little bit of music knowledge, but you do seem to struggle when you count different meters like 6/8 or 9/8, or you just have trouble understanding, how do you count different, more complicated rhythms? I recommend you check out my book. I'll put a link up on the screen for that. So it's How to Read Music Easily in 30 Days. But the key takeaway from that book that many people struggle with is the difference between a simple meter and a compound meter. So we're going to look at this first example, and I'm going to load up a PDF just so we can take a look at that. All right, and I'm just going to explain 4/4, which is really the most common time signature. It's often referred to as common time. You might see that time signature written as 4/4. You might see it as the letter C, which stands for common time. Or you might see meters that are sort of counted and thought of similarly, like 2/2 or cut time. And we probably won't get into all that today, but my book goes into detail about that. But for today's purposes, let's talk about 4/4. And the thing you want to think about when you're counting rhythm is the understanding the pulse, the beat division, and the beat subdivision. So the pulse of music that's equivalent to what we would set our metronome to. So if we turned on a metronome and it just made this noise, that would be the pulse. So the pulse can be any speed that we choose to set it to. So the speed of that pulse is called the tempo. All right. So that gives us the tempo or the speed or how fast or slow the music or the notation will be moving. But then we move into, well, how do we notate music against this pulse? So the way we do that is the pulse is equal to the beat. So whatever note or rhythmic value is equivalent to a beat, that's defined by the meter. So to figure that out, we look at the time signature, and as I said, there's two categories of meter, and this is what really throws people off. The simple meters, they line up very logically, and it makes a lot of sense because in this case, if we look at the time signature, the top number is 4, so that's telling us there's going to be 4 beats in a measure, and the bottom number is telling us what note value or what rhythmic value is a beat. So in this case, the bottom note is 4. And think about it like a fraction. So if we look at this graphic here and we see a whole circle divided into 4 equal parts, each part is a fourth or a quarter of that whole circle. So in this case, the bottom number 4, imagine it like it was a fraction, the number 1 over 4. That's telling us the beat is equivalent to a quarter note. So in this case, there'll be 4 of these quarter notes in every measure. And when we count them, we want to count, there's lots of counting systems. I'm not telling you there's only one way to do it, but there's only one way I recommend to do it. And to me, it's the most logical because we put the number of the beat on every beat. So we'll count 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm sort of reading this clockwise from the top around the circle. And that's important to understand as we move into compound meters. For example, a compound meter that's very common is 6/8. So we might see 6/8 notes. But we don't want to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for all the eighth notes. Not that that's wrong or incorrect. I mean, you'll certainly find people that might teach it that way. But what it means is that you're counting the pulses. You're not counting the beats, because the beats in 6/8 would be a dotted quarter note. There'd be 2 beats. So 1 lolly, 2 lolly, 1 lolly, 2 lolly, instead of counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If we do it that way, we're saying the number 1 on beat 1 and the number 4 on beat 2. And again, it's not wrong. It's just a different way of doing it. There's lots of ways to count music. But for me, the most logical system is where we count the number of the beat on the beat itself. So for example, in 6/8, 1 lolly, 2 lolly, we're counting 1 and 2 on the 2 beats. All right, but we're going to stick to 4/4 this morning just to keep things simple and understandable. So the graphic we see here, we've got 4/4, 4 beats in a measure, and the beat is equivalent to a quarter note. So that's what we would call the beat level. Now we're going to move into the next level, which is the beat division. So we're dividing the beat. And this is where it's critical to understand a simple meter versus a compound meter, because a simple meter divides the beat into 2 equal pieces. And the compound meter will divide it into 3. And that's the difference between the way we count in simple. We'll count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and as we're dividing that beat. If this were 12/8, 12/8 is a compound meter that also has 4 beats in every measure. But the beat unit is a dotted quarter note, and it divides into 3 equal eighth notes. So 12/8 would be counted 1 lolly, 2 lolly, 3 lolly, 4 lolly. All right. And I don't have a clean visual example to show you this morning, but we can look at that in future episodes. But in my book, I go through a lot of detail, the distinction between those with lots of graphic examples. But for simplicity today, we know the beat is a quarter note, and the division of the beat, we divide it into 2 equal pieces. So 2/8 notes added together will equal a quarter. Just like in counting fractions, if you add 2/8 together, it will be 1/4 or a quarter. So it's continuing to divide the circle here, the whole, very logically. All right, so and then we count that. The division, we put the word "and" on the beat division. So again, it's counted 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. All right. The last thing is here's the example. I do have an example right here of if it were to be 12/8. All right, so this would be the example. Disregard the 4/4 there. It should say 12/8 if we were looking at that. But again, if it was 12/8, we'd still have 4 beats a measure, because in compound meters, we take the top number, which would be 12, and divide it by 3. That's how we know the number of beats. So the beat would still be counted 1, 2, 3, 4, but the division of that beat would be counted by dividing it into 3 using the syllables la, li. Why do we use la, li instead of and? Well, it's very convenient as we continue to learn about more complex rhythms to use different syllables at different sort of fractional cuts around the circle. You'll find counting systems where they'll tell you to count this 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a very valid way that some systems teach and people learn it. But if we were to count it that way, 1 and 2 and, the and, when we're saying and, it's lining up in a different place than when we say the word and in the syllable or in the simple meter. So I find that students start to get confused as the rhythms get more complicated by counting it that way. This particular method uses la, li, and the syllables are kind of arbitrary. You'll find there's some rhythm system called the Takadimi system, and it uses pretty much the same thing I'm explaining to you, but just different syllables. And they get into more advanced things as the more advanced meters crop up. But again, the syllables are fairly arbitrary, but the key here is that you're not saying the same syllable at different fractional locations in the circle. Okay, so just to wrap that up, if this were 12/8, here's a visual representation of how that beat divides into 3 because it's a complex meter or compound meter. And it would be counted 1 lolly, 2 lolly, 3 lolly, 4 lolly. Okay. The last thing to cover would be the subdivision of the beat. So the subdivision just divides the division level again into 2. Again, I don't have a graphic to show you of that, but we'll take a look at some music with 16th notes. But we just continue to divide by 2. So the 8th note would break into a set of 2 16th notes. All right, and we would see a visual sort of circle here divided into 16 like slices of the pie because the 16th note, 16 of them all together adds up to a whole, and that would fill up the circle. All right, so if you have questions about what we've just covered, feel free to throw them in the chat window. If that was not super clear to you because maybe you're a bit more of a visual learner, head over to my website. It's oneminutemusiclesson.com and click on the lessons link. In the lessons link, you'll find probably about 30 different foundational music lessons that are all about a minute long, and there's a whole set on rhythm. If you'll hold just a moment, I'll tell you the numbers. I don't know them off the top of my head. And let's see. There will be a lesson about simple meters, a lesson about compound meters, and then a lesson about the different divisions that I've just described. So these are going to be lessons numbers 9, 10, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. All right, and those will help you tremendously. Those line up also with my book. I go into a lot more detail in the book, but I do find that the video lessons, they really help people understand it because it's nice to see the visual while it's being explained. Okay, so that's just some core foundational information. So let's apply it to Piano Marvel. So let's switch back into that. And we're going to look in the method cabinet. We're just going to start on the first one. So let's click on whole notes. All right, and here you will see a piece of music. Here's a rhythmic exercise. It's notated in 4/4, so we know there's 4 beats a measure, and the quarter note equals a beat. And the first thing we see are whole notes. So a whole note is equal to that whole circle that we looked at. So that means we'll count it with 4 beats, 4 quarter notes added up as a whole note. And this example is great. What I like about Piano Marvel is it really is designed to start a total beginner, and then it's going to scale up to intermediate and advanced level. So if you're a brand new total beginner, you start in the method cabinet, work your way through probably maybe the first 3 levels, and then you'll be ready to jump into the music library to find different repertoire that's kind of at your appropriate level. If you're a little bit more advanced than that, some of these exercises may feel silly to you, but what I recommend, even if they do feel a bit below your level, really focus in on the counting. I find that so many people ask me lots of questions about rhythm, and when we drill down into the problem, they just don't really understand the basics that we've talked about this morning all that firmly. So these are good exercises not only for counting, but they're great for practicing coordination when you're sort of in that beginning stage of coordinating your hand, your eye reading, counting things out loud, looking at the keyboard. It's a lot of things you're processing as a brand new beginner. But we're going to look at this one in the assess mode. Piano Marvel has 2 modes, the prepare mode and the assess mode. Prepare mode lets you be the driver of the software, whereas the assess mode lets the software be the driver of the tempo. So it's going to move along whether you're playing or not. And the prepare mode, like I said, you're moving along the cursor yourself, so it won't leave you in the dust. It's going to wait for you to do everything. But what I'd like you to do is, if you have your setup ready to go with Piano Marvel, feel free to follow along. But if you don't, let's just do this exercise by clapping. So you'll put your hands up, and then we're going to clap along where the whole notes are. This is a fairly simple example, and you're going to see the text on the screen says hold and rest. So it's just telling you sort of verbally what to do. But what I'm going to recommend you do is actually count that out loud. And we'll look at an example in a moment where that counting is actually written in to make that more clear. But the whole note, we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the whole rest just behind it, we'll count 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, the rest symbol. It's important to know the whole rest is like a little square symbol, and the half rest is also a square symbol. And I like to tell students, think of them like a hat, because the whole note, the little square hangs below the line, and the half note, it's above the line. If you filled a hat full of water, it would be easier. You can only fill it if the hat's hanging down, so it's heavier. So that, to me, that's just like an easy way to remember. The one hanging down is the 4, and the one that's above is the 2. But we'll look at some examples that might clear that up. So let's do that together, hands up, and this is just a very simple to warm up exercise.
1, 2, set, go.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's it. All right, so if I was playing that along on my keyboard, of course, it would measure the performance. It would tell me what notes I got right or wrong. This is just one note right on middle C, so that would be pretty easy to follow along. All right, but I'm going to move along because that lesson, most people can master that one at sight, not too hard. All right, so we're going to close that out and move on to the half notes. All right, so here you'll see the first note is the half note. Just behind it is the half rest. And this is where you can see that little square looks exactly the same, but the difference is it's above the line. So it's like the little hat. Whereas the whole rest, it's like an upside down hat. So let's do the same thing here. We're keeping it at a pretty steady tempo just because the rhythms are so simple. So we're going to assess this one. Again, it's a half note. A half note equals 2 beats. It's like half of the circle, which, if we'll remember the graphic, half of that circle, 2 quarter notes filled it up. All right, so let's just do this one again as a warm-up, and here we go.
1, 2, set, go.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, off. All right, so that last one was a whole note. Okay, so not to move along too quickly, if you have a question, let me know right here in the chat. All right, so we've talked about the whole note, which is 4 beats, the half note, which is 2 beats, all right, and next is the quarter note. All right, so before I move on, I'll make a note because we do have an international audience here. In America, so I'm located in Champaign, Illinois, which is about 2 hours south of Chicago. In the USA, we use the counting system, the whole note, the half note, the quarter note, the eighth note, etc. Other systems, particularly British, but also other places in the world, they'll use these words minims, crotchets, semi-brevs. You might occasionally you'll see the brev. The brev is 2 whole notes tied together, but the brev comes from medieval notation, and we don't typically see that any longer. So it's good to be aware if you are playing music with other people or you're connecting with folks around the world, there are different words to describe these things. Okay, let's wrap up with the quarter notes. All right. Same meter, 4/4. Same beat unit, quarter note. There's going to be 4 quarter notes in a measure. All right, so let's warm up. I'm going to take the tempo down just a notch to 90 beats per minute. So that's our pulse, the metronome pulse. All right, and we're going to do this one together. So here we go.
1, 2, set, go.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Excellent. So we're just mixing quarter notes and whole notes there. Okay, so that is the foundation for almost all of the probably level 1 to maybe 3 pieces in Piano Marvel. You'll start to see some eighth notes by that point. But that amount of rhythm counting and understanding, that's going to take you through the first couple levels of music in the music library. Okay, let's move ahead though to the eighth notes. All right, so this is example 14. Okay, so this is notation, standard notation here, but we have the counting written in. So as you're learning to count rhythms, it is essential that you write in the counting in your music. And the reason that I say that it's essential is that when we're counting music that is challenging for us, if you look at this and you think, okay, that's a little challenging, our brains just can't handle doing all the counting and functions at the same time. So what will happen is you might count measure one pretty smoothly, no problem. But before you know it, you'll start to build a little tension or anxiety around doing it correctly, and you lose your place, or you can't quite keep up. So really what you're doing is you begin to default to just imitating. Or you're looking at the visual placement of the notes on the page, and you're doing your best to just sort of clap where you think the rhythm is based on sort of its visual location. I talk about this in my book. There's a difference between proportional notation, which would, or like proportional placement of the notes, which is what many people think is happening. But that's not really how music is notated. In a lot of examples, it's pretty close to proportional. So what I mean by that is, if the note is 4 beats long, there's sort of 4 beats worth of space there. But you'll notice the quarter note and the eighth notes here, and really the half note here, they're not exactly as long as they actually are by aural perception. So in simple music like this, they're pretty close. But as we get into more and more complex notation, the notes are actually put in, spaced in such a way that the publisher can fit the notes comfortably on the page and you can read them comfortably, but they don't reflect the actual length of time in all cases. And that's why I recommend you write in the counting, because the counting itself, this is what we're focusing on, is the counting, not the visual look of the music. And it's very easy when we start and we don't understand it that well to just continue to lean on the crutch of the visual. All right, but let's look at this one. We've added in the counting, so we see the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. That's where the beat is lined up in the measure. And then the word and, wherever the beat is divided into 2 equal pieces, the and is right on that, the division right in the middle. All right, so we're going to do this one a little bit slower. This is at 70 beats per minute. All right, so hands up. All right, and this is where I'm going to try with you just my method of, I like to give 2 measures of count in. Piano Marvel's just going to give you 1 just for efficiency's sake. But if you're doing it yourself without a computer, I always recommend you count 2 measures before you start. Really, it gives you a measure to get prepared, and it gives you, if you're like me, and a lot of students I've had have been like this, it gives you time to sort of ease that anxiousness in the body, or the muscle tension that will creep up when you know this is challenging and you're just trying your best to keep up. All right, so I'm going to count 2 measures and then we'll do it together. I won't do it with the software this time. Okay, so hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3, 4. So the number 4 is not written on the score here, where we have the half notes. We'll do that again, and you may have felt as though that third measure, where it was all eighth notes, you may have felt unprepared when we got to that point, because maybe it moved a little quicker than you were ready for. So this time, I'm going to clap the rhythm correctly, just as you see on the screen, but I'm going to count the beat division the whole time. So by doing that, the tempo stays very steady, and we're saying the same thing all the way through, but we're clapping the correct rhythm. So I'll demonstrate that, and then we'll try it together. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 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 and. So for a lot of beginners, it's easier to verbally count that beat division the entire time. And the reason that is once you've got the pattern going and you're speaking it, you don't have to think about it at all. That's one less item to think about. And in reading music, you really have to learn various skills so that your brain has less to do at the same time. So this is called chunking. And I talk about that in my book. There's a chapter on chunking, and it sort of explains that concept. So regardless of which method, you have to try it yourself to see which method works for you. But I recommend, if nothing else, write in the counts. This accomplishes two things. One, when you're writing it, it's just like learning to write your alphabet or learning how to spell words, when you're young. You're giving yourself plenty of time to do the mathematical calculation and figure out what is the counting. So you don't have to do that in real time when you write it out. And then, once it's written out this way, you can focus on reading the counting itself versus the notes, which is, that's truly what we're trying to get you, that's the point we're trying to get towards. We're reading the counting, we're not relying on the visual of the rhythm itself. Okay, so let's do this one together. We'll do it in assess mode. All right, so it'll just give us one measure introduction. All right, and I'm just going to count the rhythm itself. I won't count the subdivision.
1, 2, set, go.
1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4. All right. When we do have the counting written in, it's much easier to look ahead because you've had years of experience reading text and numerals, whereas you may not have years of experience reading the notes and the notation itself. So by writing it in, it's much easier to scan ahead. And again, that's less information for you to process. You're chunking more information together. Okay, so these examples are not terribly complicated, but you may be at a point where this is maxing you out on your ability. So don't feel as though you should be grasping it any faster if that's how you're feeling. It takes time for people to master those levels. The good news here in Piano Marvel is you've got 20 different exercises that are all going to just stay focused right on this skill level. It's going to introduce a couple different notes at the keyboard just to help keep it interesting. And every one of these examples has a nice accompaniment to play along with. So it's not so boring to just hear one note played at a time. There's a backing track to go along with it. Before we move on from this one, the last ones are the flashcards. So I'll open the flashcards. All right, and the way these are designed, they're a little bit deceptive. In my own opinion, but there's a video link at the top, how to practice flashcards, and if you click that, he'll just show you how to go through them. But the key thing to note here in the flashcard system, every measure doesn't have 4 beats, and this is not a standard way you'll see this in printed music. It's just a little hack in the system so that they're able to show you one rhythm at a time, and you can't scan ahead to see what the next rhythm is. So what I mean by that is this first measure, you'll see 4 quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, 4. But the next measure only has 1 quarter rest. So we're actually going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 4 whole measures visually, whereas the rhythm content within the measure is only 1 beat. So this again gives you this is a clear example of how the proportional size of the note, sorry, you can't see that, the proportional size is irrelevant. And that tricks so many people because they're reliant on that visual information. Let's see, Sandy has a comment here. We should be learning this right along with reading as children. I hope our future can reflect this. You know, in some countries and cultures, they actually really do teach music. I mean, America's very diverse in our education system. So I had music education like this as a kid, but it wasn't overly robust. I certainly learned all of it in my piano lessons. But I know in Hungary and different parts of Europe, they have the Kodali system, which incorporates a lot of this information we're talking about. And it's much more integrated into the system. I can't speak for other parts of the world. I just happen to know teachers in Hungary that talk about that. But great comment, Sandy. Very true. So let's try this one together. And what you'll do here is we'll see the rhythm in the first measure. These 4 measures will move very quickly, and then we'll see another rhythm. So it's kind of like using paper flashcards. So let's give it a try. All right, and this one, it's only in prepare mode, so it's not going to move ahead for us. That gives us a little more time to try it. And I'll play the keyboard so the software can advance. All right, so here we go. All right, you can clap along or play your keyboard. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Oh, sorry, my keyboard has turned off. We've waited too long. Let me reestablish my connection here. All right, so I have a Yamaha P45. I love this keyboard. It's an awesome keyboard, but it has an automatic shut-off feature. So if I sit for 10 minutes without playing, it turns itself off. Let's try stopping that. Let me just reestablish my connection. Here we go. All right, and here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so it'll calculate that rhythm. I'm not totally sure how it calculates that. The flashcards are a little different than the rest of the system. All right, but as you progress through, they become more challenging. These flashcards are really good for combining rhythm counting and hand coordination. So what they're trying to get you to do with these exercises is just be introduced to the idea of independence of your hands. So when you're playing the keyboard, of course, or the piano, your left hand and right hands are doing different things at different times. You won't have that necessarily have that problem with other instruments, but you know it does exist in other instruments like mallet instruments like xylophone or vibraphone. But you know, different instruments, different types of technique problems. Okay. The next thing I want to move on to is in level 2 of the method cabinet, we're going to be introduced to rhythm songs. And these are where they've taken songs that you're probably, you know already, but they've notated just the rhythm on one note, so like middle C. And that gives you sort of a bridge between playing along and imitating and learning how to truly be focused on the counting of the rhythm. So let's look at, let's see, Alouette. Let's do Jingle Bells because we're getting into the holiday season. I think I'm putting my Christmas tree up. The moment this election's over, I'm putting up a tree. So let's look at the Jingle Bells rhythm. So the beauty of this, again, it's only the rhythm of the song Jingle Bells. It's not the actual pitches or the correct notes on the keyboard. So you can stay really focused on this one element of rhythm counting. So this one, it doesn't have the counting written in for you, so you have to do the mental work there. But let's try it together. So we've got quarter notes and half notes and whole notes, and you'll notice there's a dotted quarter note and an eighth note here. All right, so the dot, what does that dot mean? The dot in notation tells us take whatever value this is, the quarter note, and add half of its value to it. So a dotted quarter, instead of 1 beat, will have 1.5 beats. If we were to see a dotted eighth note, or dotted half note, that has 2 beats, the half note, but we add half its value, a quarter, so we'd get 3 beats. The dotted, any dotted notation, I think that throws people a little in the beginning, and then they'll understand it pretty intuitively in simple meters. But then when compound meters come in, they have more trouble. I don't think there's technically much different challenge there, but they mean different things in the different meters. So in simple meters, the dot is always going to extend over a beat, whereas in compound meters, the dotted notes, that is the beat or the pulse that we feel. So they don't cross over the beat the same way. Okay, but that's starting to go down a rabbit hole. Let's go ahead and do this one together. Hands up. We're going to do it in assessment mode so it can play along the accompaniment with it. Here we go. 1, 2, 3,
set,
go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that could be a really fast tempo for you, and even for myself, I'm not fully awake this morning. I need a moment to adjust. So we might want to go into the practice mode. We might want to just drop that down. So of course we could manually adjust the tempo with the slider bar down here, or we could just choose a predetermined practice speed for us. So I'm going to do that again at 60 beats per minute. We'll do that together one more time. And the challenge in this exercise is measure 3. We'll be counting 1, 2, 3, and then I would count beat 4, say 4, and then the and on that eighth note. When you have any notation that crosses the beat, or what I mean is that the sound is still going when that beat, that downbeat happens, but we're not clapping or playing a note. So on beat 4, we're still holding over from our dotted quarter note. It's much easier to say the beat number 4 and then say the and here than it is to leave the 4 out for a very beginning person. Okay? So let's try that again, a little bit slower. And hands up.
1, 2, set, go.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, excellent. Okay, so you can see the rhythms as we progress in the levels, they're getting progressively more challenging. So they have several of these sort of rhythm-only examples. But let's finish up discussing that with the flashcards example. No, this is not the one I want. Let's look at the other one. Where is that at? I think it's going to be 4A. I may not be able to find it quickly, but there's one in here where the examples are popular songs like Somewhere Over the Rainbow, but they don't tell you what the songs are. They've just got the rhythms notated out. And it's a nice one because as you're counting it and playing along, you'll figure out what the song is. But it's nice that they don't tell you, so you actually have to count it rather than saying, oh, I know that song, let me just imitate what the rhythm is. But we'll wrap up here with level 4. We'll introduce the 16th notes. Okay, and we can see the counting for this written in. So we talked at the beginning of our episode, we have the beat level in 4/4 is the quarter note. The division level is the 8th note, so we're dividing that beat into 2 equal pieces. And then the subdivision, we're dividing the 8th note into 2 equal pieces as well, which is the 16th note. So here's a nice example where we can see the counting is written in, which is going to make this tremendously more easy than trying it without the writing or without the counting. So we're going to do this one kind of slow, all right, but it's going to be counted as such. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a... So that may be very difficult for you at your given skill level. So when we practice this, if you're ready to practice something at this level, don't rush through it. The key to learning these rhythms is to really understand conceptually how they're counted. When you find yourself sort of leaning into just imitating or looking at the visual spacing of the notes, it's just going to take you longer to learn it. You have to focus on the counting part to get strong at the conceptual side of things. So we're going to do this one in assess mode, but I'm going to do it, they say 60 for the slowest, but I'm going to drop it down lower than that. Let's see. All right, I don't know if I can quite see it. Let me just make my window bigger here. I'm going to drop it down to about 48. All right, so let's do this one together, clapping and counting. All right, and this will be our last one for today.
1, 2, set, go.
1E and a 2, 3E and a 4, 1 and a 2, 3 and a 4, 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1E and a 2, 3E and a 4, 1E and a 2 and a 3 and 4, and 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1E and a 2 and a 3, 4. All right, so this is a great example of, I'm not even really focusing well enough this morning, where you just kind of fall into not really staying focused. And I'm just speaking for myself here. So I'm going to do this one slower just to demonstrate it. And again, you can see this is a very clear example of the visual proportion doesn't line up to the aural perception of the rhythm. And I'm going to count this one again, just demonstrating for you, with a count-in with the subdivision, which makes it a little bit easier to do, and I'll say the subdivision as we do it. Okay, so I'm going to just count 4 beats. 1, E and a 2, E and a 3, E and a 4, E and a 1, E and a 2, E and a 3, E and a 4, E and a 1, E and a 2, E and a 3, E and a 4, E and a 1, E and a 2, E and a 3, E and a 4, E and a 1, E and a 2, E and a 3, E and a 4, E and I'll stop right there just for this morning. Okay, so you can see the program has lots and lots of examples, and I like that they're approaching things from different angles. Different people learn different ways, and music is no exception to that. Some students have to see the rhythm written out to understand it. Some people can sort of instinctively grasp onto it a little bit faster. Whatever the case, whatever skill level you're at, I think you'll find examples in Piano Marvel that really help you tackle these things from multiple angles. All right, so I'm going to close that out, and I'll give us a little bit of time to ask some questions. One thing I'm going to do here very quickly before I forget is load up a little note. And I have mentioned, I'm going to put this in the comment so you guys can see that. Sandy, I had mentioned to you specifically, I got myself a Bluetooth MIDI connector to connect my keyboard to my computer wirelessly. But the reason I got that specifically was for the iPad. I wanted to be able to connect my iPad, Piano Marvel, because it runs on the iPad as well, to my MIDI keyboard. And there's different ways to do that, but I prefer the wireless connection because if you're an iPad owner, you're going to move that thing all around the house. You don't want it attached to something or have to constantly attach and reattach something. So there's a link there in the chat window to the particular product I bought, which was the Yamaha, let me type this out so you can see it without the link, UT something. Let me look at I'll just put the link on the screen so we can all see it together. And while I'm loading that, I'm going to sort of explain, is this product right for you or not? Because it may not be depending on your keyboard. So it's the UD-BT01. What a catchy name. This particular product, you'll need to look at the back of your keyboard, and you can have 2 ways a MIDI keyboard, a digital keyboard, can connect to a computer. So the older way, if you have an older keyboard that you bought years ago, this is this particular product. It's not wrong for you. The black box here that says Yamaha, you could still use that part, but the wire that they include with it for that's with the package, it connects to a USB port on your MIDI keyboard. That's really only on fairly newer models. Like if you bought it within the last, I don't know, 4 years maybe, you probably have the USB style connector. But if you have an older keyboard, here's an example, this O-Tracky MIDI cable. You probably need an additional cable to connect it to this Bluetooth connector. So if you are considering buying something like this, don't just rush right out and click buy. Make sure you have the proper connector. And if you're a little confused by that, I'm going to point you to a page on the Piano Marvel website. So if we go directly to their blog, let's see if we can do that easily. Piano Marvel. They will have an article about what kind of connector. But I tell you, you know what? Actually, it's a little bit easier to get to it from within Piano Marvel. If we look at the video menu and the setup menu, they'll have a video that explains all this information. But they will visually show you the difference between these two types of cables. So if you're hesitant about that, make sure you have the right kind of cable. If you have questions, feel free to contact me directly at our mailbag. I'll put a link to that on the screen. All right, so if you do have questions about what kind of connector do I need and whatnot, feel free to ask me at oneminutemusiclesson.com/mailbag. Again, I do plan to write a review about this product. I'm doing some testing, so I use a Macintosh computer, an Apple, and the only problem I found so far is that I have to reestablish the connection to the Bluetooth device occasionally, and it's not a problem, but I find it to be a little bit annoying. I'd prefer it to be connected all the time. If you're used to the older model where the MIDI cable is just connected through a wire, it never loses the connection. Whereas the Bluetooth, I think when I restart my computer, I have to reestablish the connection. So again, it's not a problem. It's just kind of something you have to get used to. So I'm still working on a review for that. Okay, so if you have a question or you have a question about anything we've covered today, feel free to let us know at oneminutemusiclesson.com/mailbag. That's going to do it for today. I'm going to wrap us up. We're a little bit over time. But I do want to thank you all for attending live if you're here live, or thank you for watching the replay if you're watching this throughout the week. One announcement I would love to just make, I always like to say this on each of our shows, it's just a special thank you to our patrons. We are a mission-driven organization, and we are really trying to help people around the world learn music literacy, really using traditional methods and techniques, but we like to combine that with music technology. So we do thank our patrons, and if you want to learn more about that, just visit oneminutemusiclesson.com/support. All right. And yeah, I see Don's comment coming in here. Thanks for this. I really enjoy being a part of the community. I love that you guys are showing up week after week and interacting in the comments. That is what makes this really so special for me. So again, thank you to all our patrons out there. And if you want to learn more, just visit our support page. But that's going to be it for today. We'll continue doing some episodes like this on rhythm, and we'll use some different tools. I like talking about Piano Marvel because if you decide to use it, that is an investment. So I like people to really get their money's worth out of that. But there's also some other sites that are free. I have several articles on my blog. If you just click on the articles link, you can search for rhythm to see different things. One I like is practice, sitereadingpractice.com. I forget the exact link, but we can talk about that in a future episode. But it has lots of free examples there too. So don't feel as though you have to use the Piano Marvel software to do this stuff. Okay, that's going to be it. Thank you all so much for joining today. I'll see you next week. And that's going to be it for this episode of In Tune. Take care.